This is Scenic Roots. I'm Ray Bassett. Thanks for joining us. Last month, President Trump announced his plan for tariffs on imports, with many twists and turns since, including a pause for consumers, businesses, nations, and markets. How will all of this shake out for the economy and jobs here in the Chattanooga area? Dr. Howard Wall is director of the Center for Regional Economic Research, formed last year on our campus, the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, connecting the Gary W. Rollins College of Business with the community. Dr. Bento Lobo is professor of finance in the Department of Finance and Economics at UTC's Rollins College.
Bento, Howard, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Talk about what you are seeing and hearing in the Chattanooga area about the impact, whether it's already happening or projected to happen, from President Trump's moves on tariffs.
I think primarily what I hear is that the messaging is unclear and confusing. And as a consequence, that tends to create uncertainty and people unsure about what they need to be doing next and how to think about the problem. That's been the biggest issue. And then there's concern that the effects of the tariffs, now that we're on a pause, are still to be felt, which means that second, third, fourth quarter of this year is when we are likely to feel the heavy weight of tariff policy.
It really depends on what type of business you run to whether it's going to hit you. But businesses, like Bento said, it's a lot of uncertainty that they're facing, and you have to make plans. You have to make an order for supplies. Saw a story about a local cheese seller and relies on imports from France. But you have to plan ahead for that, and you have no idea what those costs are going to be. So the response is to freeze. And when you freeze because of uncertainty, that means you're not hiring, it means you're not buying, it means you're not selling. And the economy can come to a halt, even though there aren't any tariffs imposed yet. Although there are going to be some. It's just uncertain what they even are going to be.
Which sectors are most concerned?
I think eventually, ironically, it will be the manufacturing sector. They're the ones who are supposed to be helped by these tariffs, but tariffs penalize success. And Chattanooga has been a manufacturing success, not a manufacturing failure. So when you put import tariffs on your raw materials, like aluminum, steel, and so on, then your costs are going to go up, and you're the one who suffers, because tariffs are for protection. And if you don't need the protection, then you're the one getting hit by them.
I will tell you from my perspective, teaching senior students, I'm really concerned for my students because jobs are scarce, because firms are sitting tight right now, uncertain about what they want to do. Inaction is the typical reaction to uncertainty of this nature. And so a lot of our seniors are sitting without job offers right now, which is very unlike our typical situation.
And how typical is our situation here in Chattanooga and the Tennessee Valley compared to other parts of the country? Uncertainty is like a cloud on everything everywhere, but we don't all see and feel the cloud the same way necessarily.
Well, I think most of the country, they'll be hit because of consumers being hit, right? They'll pay higher prices for lots and lots of goods, fruits, vegetables in particular, and eventually cars and everything else. But it's the producers of those goods that are going to be hit by hardest and earliest. And since we are a manufacturing and producing area, then we'll be hit differently from others. It won't just be consumers. It will also be on the business side and hit early with the uncertainty, then hit again with the tariffs, whatever they are, and then consumers being hit the whole time.
Is there something to be said about the diagnosis of how we trade with the rest of the world that supports a change in policy from what we have seen in the past 25 years with globalization, regardless of how you analyze President Trump's moves with tariffs?
Well, you can't really, because the premise for the action that's been taken is that trade deficits are bad, trade is bad, and that a trade deficit within every country is bad, that you're supposed to have balanced trade, not just overall, but with each and every country. And economically, that's nonsense. I mean, it just is nonsense. Your household doesn't operate that way. Countries don't operate that way. Now, that said, if you were going to look at the trading system, say, a year or two ago and say, okay, where can we adjust? China is an issue, but it's not an economics issue. It's a strategic issue where economics might come into play. So there's some argument for saying, well, we need to do something about China's dominance, or we don't want to rely on China. But tariffs on Canada are not the answer to China.
I think one of the unfortunate side effects of what's likely to happen here is the major loss of credibility that we will observe with respect to U.S. policymaking, U.S. institutions. One of the flows, if you will, capital flows that we are observing is away from U.S. dollars right now. It's a de-dollarizing phenomenon. The U.S. dollar, as you may know, is dominant in global finance.
It's the world's reserve currency.
It's the world's reserve currency.
And this is fueling questions about the strength of that status.
Exactly. So this is a very real threat to the dollar's central status as a reserve currency, although there really aren't that many great alternatives to the U.S. dollar currently. But the very fact that people are moving away from dollar-denominated assets, seriously considering dumping U.S. dollar-denominated assets like bonds and stocks to a certain extent, places a greater what we call risk premium on the U.S. market. And so going forward, that exorbitant privilege that we have attributed to the U.S. dollar is likely to fade unless there is a change in stance and change in policy, change in tone. A lot of this goes back to the way policy is being messaged right now, and it's not being well received, and consequently, the damage to institutions and credibility is likely to take a heavy toll.
Elements of the Trump administration, and you can never tell which ones they are, they're moving targets for sure, think that it's costly to have the dollar as a reserve currency, that it imposes burdens on or something, and that's mostly nonsense. The benefits to it are huge compared to whatever minor costs there are. People were saying, well, they don't want to stem this flee from the dollar. And the president had to come out and say that he didn't have a goal of getting rid of the U.S. as a reserve currency, but who believes that he'll stick to that from day to day? Or if it was just a response to the markets, who have been reacting very strongly.
And they reacted favorably to that statement.
Right. And normally you get, stocks go down because you think profits are going to be low. But usually that means that you go into bonds as a safe refuge, and particularly treasury bills. U.S. government bonds would be the safe place to go. But instead of going from stocks that became risky to bonds, they went overseas. And that is not a normal thing.
Do we have any sense of how this uncertainty impacts or may likely impact inflation?
The uncertainty is affecting inflation expectations right now more than anything else. And what we can see in the data is that inflation expectations have ticked up quite sharply when you look at 2 to 5 year inflation expectations. They're hovering in the 4.5%, 5% range, which is high for the U.S. in general. I think the tariffs themselves are inflationary in nature. And so that's why I think this is going to be a rough summer and a rough second half of 2025, because the prices will actually start to rise. So we will see it there. But right now, I think the primary impact of policy is to affect expectations of inflation.
Well, and it doesn't help that they've threatened to fire the Fed chair, which he, again, backed off of that. But do you believe that after years of attacking? And the Fed chair's term is over in 2026. So it's certainly signaling something about the next chair that we nominated. And so, again, more and more uncertainty, and walking back does not cancel out the uncertainty that you've injected.
I cannot emphasize enough the damage to institutions that this type of policy making does. And even when you badmouth the Fed chair and talk about calling somebody a loser and using language of that nature, that belittling of that entire institution does nobody any good, right? In fact, there is downright harm that comes from that. And I think that's a lot of what's at play right now as well.
Talk more about your corner of UTC as a resource for data and for trying to make sense of what's in front of us and the uncertainty at this time.
Well, at the Center for Regional Economic Research, our job is to monitor and keep an eye on the Chattanooga economy, what affects it, what's going to affect it. And one thing for sure is to go to our website, which you can just Google CRER-UTC. And we have data there and also forecasts. And we had jumps and changes in the local forecast. So there's different scenarios portrayed there. I'm sensing that I might be doing more frequent forecasts as events come into play. But that would be a good resource, is to go to our website for the data to find out the latest thing that's available and whatever explanations we do. And we always appear in the media too, like this.
And Howard puts out a bunch of white papers as well, and there are research scholars that are also putting white papers out. And so a lot of these will be very topical and very relevant to the local area.
All right, Bento, Howard, thanks so much.
Thank you, Ray.
Thanks, Ray.
At Chattanooga Airport, boardings by air passengers recently hit another record, and new nonstop routes are set to take off next month. April Cameron is the airport's president and CEO.
April, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
A lot of things happening at the airport.
Absolutely. We have a lot of things, great things to talk about, actually. A lot of growth, more expansion coming. And so, yes, we're definitely moving in the right direction.
More people boarding planes in the month of March.
Absolutely. Once again, we set another record. So for about the past 6 months, we have every month set a new record for that month for all of our history. So in March, we set a record. It was the best March that we had ever had with over 50,000 enplanements. And so we're seeing that trend continue, and it's looking like we're probably going to see another record year for 2025.
And talk more about how the additional routes from additional carriers are fueling this.
Oh, it's certainly fueling it. So in the past year, leading up to June of this year when Spirit announces, we will have added 6 new nonstop flights from Chattanooga to 6 new destinations. And also, as I talked about, we have a new carrier, Spirit. They're going to be going direct to Newark, Fort Lauderdale, and Orlando International. So that's 3 new routes. And that's on top of Allegiant already adding Las Vegas, Punta Gorda, and then Delta bringing LaGuardia back. So 6 new destinations in 1 year. That's bringing our seat capacity up tremendously. So our seat capacity is the number of seats that we have available for sale. And so the seat capacity from June of 24 to June of 25 is increasing more than 35%. So that's tremendous growth for 1 year span of time.
And you're adding on top of what you have just added, thinking about the direct from New York LaGuardia to Chattanooga, there is the addition of Saturday flights.
Yes.
From this upcoming June 7th to August 30th.
Yes, absolutely. Several of our legacy carriers have added more frequencies to their destinations. So as you mentioned, LaGuardia is adding that Saturday service. Delta has continued to add frequencies into Atlanta. We're up to 9 daily flights to Atlanta. We have 8 daily flights to Charlotte. We've got 4 going into Dallas and 2 into Detroit. And then United has recently loaded a 4th daily trip to Chicago starting in September. So this slow, consistent growth is exactly what we want to see because that gives us time to respond and prepare for that growth. So it's very exciting for us at the airport.
How is the airport staffing and indeed staffing up to meet these additional routes?
The airport staff is fairly consistent. So the airlines hire their own employees. So as they increase frequencies, they hire independently. Now, as for Spirit, the airport will be handling the ground handling for Spirit, similar to how we actually do the ground handling for Allegiant. So we are hiring more individuals for our ground handling department because they will be operating those Spirit flights. So we are adding some capacity, but as far as our other staff members, as such as admin, police, we're all fairly consistent.
And how is this additional seat capacity, these additional routes, chipping away at what we've talked about before, leakage with people who could fly here but fly elsewhere nearby?
Yes. So we have not updated our leakage study that we conducted back in 2023. That's most likely something that we will do this fall. But we are starting to see more people in our community supporting our airport and using our flights. That's where our additional numbers are coming from. And so I honestly cannot thank our community enough for supporting our local airport, because without the local community utilizing the airport and the flights that we have, we will never get more service. And so we are seeing more people use the airport, and that's resulting in us seeing more service. So it's all thanks to the community.
And there are some renovations inside in the works. Talk about that.
Yes. We recently completed the $28 million expansion. That included the 2 new gates, the new restaurant, new restrooms, expanded security checkpoint. Once we opened that second restaurant, we made the decision that the original restaurant that was past security it had been used a lot. And so it was in need of a refresh, just a little love. And so we made the decision that we were going to close that restaurant temporarily and do a complete refresh. In addition to updating all of the fixtures and the layout, we're also going to add windows into that space, and that's going to bring natural light in. We're going to add seating across those windows to allow people to see the ramp while they're enjoying their lunch. So we're really, really excited about that.
And then there is the requirement for air passengers to present real ID. Where are we on that with the airport here in Chattanooga?
So May 7th, that is the timeline that the real ID will be enforced. At that point, any individual that does not have that real ID will be required to either not be able to go through security, or they will have to have additional screening. So it's really important that everyone make sure that they have that real ID in place by May 7th. TSA is going to be handling that. That's a federal requirement, and so it's all going to be handled by TSA. But we are just trying to get the message out to the community just how important it is. Chattanooga, we really promote our ease and convenience. And so if we have a lot of people coming through the airport that do not have that real ID, it could really slow down the process. So let's make sure that everyone gets that real ID before May 7th. If you don't have it, you can always use a passport or a military ID in order to gain access through security checkpoints. So we'd like to encourage everyone to move in that direction.
And for people who want to keep up on everything happening at the airport, where can they go online?
They can check our website at www.chatairport.com.
All right. April, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Coca-Cola's first bottling operation in the world opened here in Chattanooga more than a century ago. For decades, a manufacturing plant in the Alton Park neighborhood made millions of glass bottles for Coca-Cola and other companies. Glass from the Past is an exhibit on this city's glass history, now on display at the Chattanooga Public Library through Saturday, June 21st. Morgan Hall is CEO and founder of Overlooked Materials, a glass recycling company launched last year. Emily Kleiner is a history major here on our campus, the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga.
Morgan, Emily, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Appreciate it.
Morgan, how did this exhibit come together?
It came together because over the course of starting our recycling business, I built a large personal collection of historical glass objects, which all kind of come together to tell this story about the history of Chattanooga over the last 150 years. While that collection is great to have in my own hands, I wanted to be able to share those stories with the public.
And then Emily, talk more about how you got involved in all this.
It started off as an internship-based class, and there was like 3 different organizations, including Morgan's, who came in and like kind of pitched their internship opportunities based off Morgan's presentation. It felt very inspiring. He seemed very passionate about the project, and from Chattanooga locally, I thought it would be a great way to learn more about the local history. So that's, I guess, how I came about the internship.
Talk more about some of the items in this exhibit.
So some of the items include, there's medicine bottles such as like Thatcher, Chattanooga Medicine Company. There's alcoholic bottles from Chattanooga Brewing, Chat Whiskey, milk products of Bee Valley Farms in Rossville. There is also like a mouthwash, Oxen, that was used around the Prohibition era when you wanted to get like the smell of alcohol off of your breath, try to conceal it.
Of course, all of this was possible because you had the birth of Coca-Cola bottling here in Chattanooga.
Mm-hmm. Most of the bottling is from the Chattanooga Glass Company, and it's interesting. At the bottom of the bottle is like a diamond C, and that is like their iconic symbol. As alcohol was being prohibited.
And that was another factor too. There was the birth of Coca-Cola bottling here in Chattanooga leading up to the turn of the 19th century into the 20th century. And then another factor in this was Prohibition during the 1920s.
Yes, and because of that, that's why soda became more popular. People wanted an alternative to, I guess, social drinking. So soda definitely became a very prevalent. There's a thing called like the Cola Wars. There's multiple different soda companies such as like Double Cola, and they were kind of like fighting to be like the top soda industry. So it's just very interesting seeing the different advertisements and them like just competing with each other to try to push their product out to the public.
And all of this glass produced for bottling before plastics as we know it today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's really neat. Right before there were plastic bottles or aluminum cans, if you were selling a product that was in a liquid form, it would have come in a glass bottle. Glass was that predominant packaging form really for the 100 years that predates the 1970s. One thing I want to highlight, which I think is really neat that we try to do in the exhibit, is tell the story of the through line that we discussed earlier, in that companies like the Chattanooga Medicine Company gave professionals, J.T. Lupton, their first exposure to the world of marketing, medicine products, and tonics, enough exposure that he had the confidence to be the primary investor in Coca-Cola bottling. So you see this strong connection to Chattanooga's industrial past that carries through to the soda industry, and then that really importantly carries through today. A lot of the nonprofit ecosystem and platform here in the Chattanooga region owes its existence to foundations like Lyndhurst and Benwood, which are endowments tied to Coca-Cola bottling. So there's this tremendous impact today on Chattanooga. A lot of people don't really realize resonates or ripples from the past 100 years of industrial success tied to Coke and other businesses.
And for people who want to check out the exhibit, where can they go online?
Go to our website, overlookmaterials.com. They can go to the library. The library's page has information about different events and the exhibit itself. And physically, the exhibit is on the third floor of the downtown library now through June 21st.
All right. Morgan, Emily, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. I appreciate it.
It's known as Summer Camp for Cinephiles. Next month, the Chattanooga Film Festival returns for a 12th year with in-person and virtual offerings from Friday, June 20th through Saturday, June 28th. Chris Dortch is the festival's director and lead film programmer. Dustin Kramer is the senior features programmer and the virtual events coordinator for the festival.
Chris, Dustin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us. It's back, Ray. This has been a tradition, and it means a lot. Yeah.
Let's talk about the 12th year of this festival.
No one is more shocked than we are that we are celebrating the 12th year of this thing. We truly didn't expect the city to even embrace it past its first couple of years. So now that we're over a decade in, it's been a wild ride and one that has meant a lot to us. But it's also something that sort of the public reception to the festival has started to get better and better over the years. And we're now celebrating the 4th straight year of being named one of the top 100 best reviewed film festivals in the world. And this is on a platform called Film Freeway, where there's over 15,000 film related events worldwide. So that's something that means a lot to us, and something that we're really happy to have kind of punctured out of the regional bubble and starting to see our name in places like, crazy enough, like Forbes and Deadline and things like that. So it's nice that this strange little monster has grown and broken out of the laboratory, so to speak.
And as much as you have gone virtual, you still have it in person here in Chattanooga at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah. One of the things we learned really about audience accessibility in general was that as many people who were content to attend from home, there were tons of people that were missing the camaraderie of the in-person experience. And so a couple years ago, we brought things back to the ground for the first time, kind of got our sea legs again after a couple of years just completely doing things online, and did a couple years at the Reed House where it was really fun and we got to kind of lean into the haunted history of the place. But then our friends at the Chattanooga Theater Center had been doing this incredible renovation. We love their space and honestly really love the folks behind it. And just considering the, shall I say, current state of the world, it just felt like a good thing for us to be putting our money into the hands of another arts nonprofit. We want to see all boats rise in the Chattanooga art community. And to us, it meant a lot to us that they were even considering film in that equation and opening their doors to us.
And it was the pandemic that allowed us to sort of get to the place where we learned what we needed to learn about audience accessibility, and that became part of our mission. And then the past couple of years, like you said, at the Reed House was us really rebuilding our in-person experience. And now we're back where we were in 2019 before the pandemic hit. We've just got a lot of really amazing things to show people in person and online, and we feel like we're sort of at the height of our powers in both of those arenas right now.
What's great about having the flexibility of doing this hybrid means that we're no longer bound by the laws of time and space, meaning that if we do want to
transcended, so to
try
speak.
to cram 200 movies into a week, we can now do so. So really, it's kind of led to us giving our audience a lot more bang for their buck, which is something nobody has complained about yet.
Talk about a few of the titles you've already shared that will be screened at the festival.
Yeah, one of the things I think locally that's kind of a misconception about us is that we are a horror film festival, which is to say we do have an element of horror. We celebrate genre cinema, but really cinema of all types. And one of my favorite things that we're doing this year is actually bringing back a popular film track that we've done in the past that we call Sonic Cinema. And these are movies that explore the link between music and film, or are often music documentaries. And this year, leading that off are two unbelievable music documentaries. One about the legendary British invasion band, the Zombies, called Hung Up on a Dream, that's just beyond touching. And if you're a fan of that band, it's a special experience. But even if you're new to their music, it's just touching. And to me, one of the better music docs in recent memory. There's also a film about the legendary indie band Pavement. The film's called Pavements. And to us, it was one of the most ambitious attempts at a music documentary ever, because it's simultaneously a straight ahead music documentary where we get the story of the band, but it's also the filming of a scripted, fictionalized version of the band's story and the making of a Broadway jukebox musical that uses the band's songs. So you have these three simultaneous worlds kind of being constructed around a band's art. And for us, that was just a fascinating look into things. We're kicking the weekend off with what we think is a really terrific tone setter, a Japanese film actually making its U.S. premiere. Chattanooga is the first city in America that anyone can watch this movie, but it is called Hot Spring Shark Attack. I'm fond of describing it thusly. It is like a mix between Jaws, Power Rangers, and a strong dose of LSD. It sets such a fun tone for the weekend that it lets people know that their open-mindedness will be rewarded if they come with us on this journey, so to speak.
You're bringing back some favorites and you're making room for a few things new.
Absolutely, yeah. For us, one of the big responsibilities we have, especially when there are so many festivals starting to embrace AI, technologies like that are, I think, are a little less friendly to the human side of creativity and filmmaking. And then a lot of festivals now are just showing sneak previews of movies that are going to get that wide release in 2 weeks, are going to be watchable in any multiplex in America. And for us, that gives us a greater responsibility to discover new voices and platform those new voices. And in many cases, like you say, with the returning favorites, these are filmmakers. There's a film world premiering this year, for example, called The Harbor Men. This is a terrific feature film made by a guy who we've been championing his career since he was making 3-minute short films, literally in his bathroom, stop motion style. And what he's evolved into is just incredible. So having some returning favorites and continuing to support these voices along their career, not just with one movie, is also a big important part of it.
We also have more than just movies. You spoke about Hot Spring Shark Attack. That will sort of pivot into a party. We have nightly parties for the in-person weekend of the festival. That evening, we'll be doing a sort of beach party themed luau,
complete with surf band.
Yes, Big Kahuna from Nashville.
Exactly. The terrific Big Kahuna. Kind of a montage of clips from Think Beach Blanket Bingo, Think the Monster of Party Beach, things like that. But something that kind of let us wear our kitsch on our sleeve for the evening, and we think is going to be a lot of fun. And again, a tone setter, including something we're calling our karaoke clan bake, which might be ill-advised, but we'll find out.
And for people who want to keep up on all of it, check it out. Where can they go online?
You can go to chatfilmfest.org. In addition to seeing the full press release of everything we announced, which is everything from film to stand-up comedy to parties to panels, all the things that Dustin described, you can find that information there, as well as a breakdown of absolutely every film. But also, if you have any questions or even want us to kind of choose your own adventure for you, write us an email to cffhelpdesk@chatfilmfest.org, and we will gladly make some recommendations and let you know a few things that we think you'll enjoy if you tell us a few movies that you love already.
All right, Chris, Dustin, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Ray Bassett. Join us again next time for Scenic Roots.